Going to call this special meeting of the Concord Board of Education to order. Ms. Boucher, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Campbell. Here. Mr. Du Bois.
Here.
Ms. Hastings.
Here.
Ms. Higgins.
Here.
Ms. Meeker. Here. Ms. Minot.
Here.
Ms. Sadowski.
Here.
Ms. Walsh.
Here.
And I am here. We have a quorum.
Great. I am going to move to amend the agenda. We discussed this publicly last week, but it didn't get on the paper copy, which is voting tonight to set the date for the public hearing on the two ballot resolutions on selling unneeded district property. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Great. We are going to start off with public comment this evening. I ask that you keep your remarks to under 3 minutes. Public comment is for you to give your feedback to us. It is not a question and answer session. That being said, I do try and take notes, and if there are questions that we can answer, we try and do that in the course of our discussions. Start with Mr. Brueggemann. If you haven't signed up, there's a clipboard up front to sign up.
Thank you, Madam Chair and school board members. First of all, thank you for your service on the school board. My time in the legislature makes me realize that this is a real commitment. Since the community forum, when the traffic plan was presented, it has felt that neighborhood concerns about safety and disruptions have generally fallen on deaf ears. A petition was mislaid, and neither that nor the extent of community concern was relayed to the city traffic engineers. It was portrayed as though the only issues raised were whether buses could pass and the grade of Noyes Street in the approach to South Street. Suggested alternatives are often tweaked in a way so as to present the worst possible outcome, such as claiming the necessary elimination of athletic fields. And never are they compared to the trade-offs of using neighborhood streets as bus lanes. It has never been shown how on-campus bus travel has suddenly become unsafe after 35-plus years without an incident, nor has it been shown how a traffic pattern used in the past with buses exiting on Cypress Street and that was subsequently changed because it was deemed unsafe has magically become otherwise. We are just told it is so. Noyes Street and Cypress Streets are well used by pedestrians, including students walking and biking to school. Neither has sidewalks, or for some time, traffic has been prohibited from right-hand turns onto the college streets in recognition that these streets are simply not designed to handle anything but local traffic. Imagine the suggested level of traffic this plan would introduce into this neighborhood. 19 buses in and out morning and afternoon, such that folks on the lower portion of Noyes Street will have a bus go by their house at least 76 times a day, plus buses for athletics, after-school programs, field trips, and an increase in staff traffic. Good luck to anyone using these streets on a school day. But my greatest concern is that it will only be upon the completion of the school that it will be realized how utterly untenable this plan is, and that subsequent remedies will be ultimately expensive and necessarily constrained. Now is the time to get real about considering a legitimate alternative traffic plan. I have copies of my comments. I also have just two, because I'm a terrible drawer, of one iteration that I have been trying to get the engineer to mock up over the last few weeks, to no avail. So if I may submit that?
Mr. Cashman will pass it around.
Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie Pappas.
Good evening, everybody. I echo Don's thanks for your service on this board. My name is Charlie Pappas, and I live on the corner of Princeton and Noyes Street, and my house faces Cypress Street. I was sat on my porch this morning drinking my coffee, enjoying the birds and the peace and quiet of the neighborhood I chose to live in because it felt safe. For a single mum who works full-time and a young son who walks to school every morning, along with many other children, often unsupervised, on their bikes and scooters from Princeton to Noyes to Cypress Street. It made me feel sad to think that all of this could be changing, and how when I have to back out of my driveway in the morning on Noyes Street, I may have to be contending with a procession of school buses. I've worked so hard the last few years to rescue and bring back to life an old house in this neighborhood that was in major disrepair. Again, it saddens me greatly to think how this proposed bus route could now devalue my efforts. Just while I was sipping my coffee, several runners passed me on my porch. The Concord South End community, and in particular on these streets that may be compromised, include many dog walkers. Almost all of my neighbors have enjoyed the safety of walking their children or dogs just before they have to get to work. There is also a large senior citizen population that walks in this area. Our neighborhood now faces great danger. I understand the board thinks we should leave this to the professionals and are concerned about children's safety. But what then about the safety of the children and seniors who live on Noyes, Cypress, and Princeton Street? There are no sidewalks. And with all due respect, a majority of the people making these decisions do not live in this neighborhood. Suffice it to say that I stand with my neighbors and vehemently object to the proposed bus routes coming down Cypress, Noyes, or Princeton Street. This is a quiet, residential, historic neighborhood that will be destroyed if this proposal gets passed. I am a parent, so of course I am in favor of children's safety in general, and also allowing Runlet to keep their sports field. The most sensible suggestion, in my opinion, is Barbara Higgins' plan. Main roads like South Street are engineered and designed to handle heavier flow of traffic, and they have sidewalks. The bus route should not be deviated through quiet residential neighborhoods with no sidewalks. Concord is a beautiful place to live, and I love my neighborhood. If this proposed bus route is approved, it will ruin the peace and quiet of one of the College Street's historic neighborhoods forever. Thank you for listening. And I have a copy.
Deb Nixon? Deb?
Hello, my name is Deborah Nixon. I live at 11 Noyes Street, and I've lived there for 38 years. I wish to express my serious concerns over changing the bus route from a safe, effective, and time-proven route to a dangerous and cost-prohibitive route. Again, I can emphasize what we've said all along, that there are no sidewalks, the roads are super busy, the roads are not built for buses, people park on the streets, so that makes it one lane immediately. In the winter, there will be no way two buses can pass each other on the street. They just will not fit. Trash day, I guess we're part of the new trash, so those huge trash buckets will be in the streets. So that day, and that day in winter, buses will never be able to fit down that street. And, with all the pedestrians, again, what everyone has said. And the distances between the houses and driveways is quite short. So it will allow no access for the homeowners to even enter their own driveways as the buses are lined up trying to make that left at the end of the street onto South Street. It has also been stated that this change will only affect 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon. And that sounds just a bit silly to me. 15 minutes maybe for the buses to line up, 15 minutes to load, 15 minutes to drive back down the street to get out to South Street. And again, you're not talking just AM and PM. You're talking after-school activities, sporting events, band events, weekend events. There will constantly be buses on our street. And I've also heard it said that to stress the importance of separating all the traffic. Well, certainly, and I was a parent of 4 children, the parents are not going to listen. They're going to pick their way to pick up their children, which is most convenient to them. They're not going to follow any rules. And is there going to be extra policing to watch the parents or the teachers? so they don't add to the bus traffic on our street. And I also am concerned about being constantly told that bus drivers are the better choice because they're trained. Well, yes, bus drivers are trained, and I'm sure there are very good, experienced bus drivers. But bus drivers starting out don't have that necessary experience, and they're driving huge vehicles down the street. It's not safer. It's just because they're trained bus drivers. In conclusion, all of this could have been avoided if we just utilized the existing bus routes, which have a proven effective track reason. There was no reason to have to spend all of this, our tax dollars, on all of these studies. No laws were being broken, unless you're going to purposely state that the current bus routes or the current bus route traffic has been illegal for the past 30 years. If that's the case, then that was a huge problem.
Ms. Nixon, you've gone over your time. So
Okay, I have, pardon me, but I just have.
Just
a little-
if you could wrap up.
Okay, yep. Common sense seems to be sorely lacking. There's no reason to spend millions and millions of dollars of putting sidewalks on Noyes Street when there are sidewalks existing, or hiring more crossing guards, or petition the city for a stoplight out at Princeton and Clinton Street when there already is an effective route in place. Consider using the existing proven safe bus route instead of destroying the integrity of our small local neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim McConaughey?
Thank you very much. I'm Jim McConaughey. I live at 7 Cypress Street. I have been thinking about Sassy a lot these days. Sassy was our beloved cat who was killed on Noyes Street one school morning during the 1980s when school traffic on Cypress and Noyes Street was at its peak. Sassy could tell you a lot about traffic safety these days, except he is now dead, and he only used cat words, which were a little hard to understand. But what you are proposing with this bus route through our neighborhood, as Sassy would know, is a return to the bad old days. I was dismayed by a lot of the things I heard at the building committee meeting last week, but I'll try to just focus on one or two. There were statements made and encouragements made that we should all trust the professionals. We have hired many of them. We have paid them lots of money, and obviously they know an awful lot, probably more than we do. And they have assured all of you that whatever you are planning is just going to be fine. But who knows a neighborhood better than the people who live there, particularly the people who have lived there for a long time? I've lived there for 44 years. Neighbors on either side of me have lived there for 25 years. I know there are people who have lived there 20, 30, maybe 40, maybe more years in the neighborhood. Who can better describe the history of the neighborhood, the quality of life there, and the comfort of living in a neighborhood that is truly safe than the neighbors themselves? But you might be right. There's a characteristic about all of us neighbors that should be a little suspect. We love our neighborhood. We cherish it. We are grateful that we have the opportunity to live in it, to raise our children there, to share it with our family and friends. If our neighbors are religious, they probably feel they are blessed. But you know, love is something to be wary of. It blurs the vision. It distorts our judgment. It leads us to taking on irrational behavior. So maybe you're right. Better to rely on the professionals, and let's just ignore the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean Cousin? Jean? Sorry.
Thank you. My name is Jean Cousin. I live at 5 Cypress Street, right next door to Jim. And I'm just going to read what I've got because otherwise I'll ramble and we don't have time. As you may have noticed, there's a lot of passion around the run the traffic issue. So I thought I'd introduce a dispassionate voice, AI. It relies on data, not opinion. In my search, I asked AI 2 questions. First, is routing 19 school buses daily through a small neighborhood without sidewalks a good thing? Answer, routing 19 school buses through a small neighborhood without sidewalks poses major safety, logistical, and quality of life challenges. Municipalities generally advise against this unless absolutely necessary, as heavy vehicles create severe blind spots and hazards for pedestrians on streets lacking dedicated walking paths. Sorry about the voice, it's an old voice. Second question I asked, is increasing the traffic flow in a small neighborhood without sidewalks by 63% a good thing to do? Answer, increasing outside traffic by 63% in a small neighborhood without sidewalks is generally considered detrimental to the community. This surge in vehicles severely compromises pedestrian safety, diminishes neighborhood tranquility, and degrades the local environment. Where does the 63% increase come from? First, you increase the staff parking lot in the back of the school from 30 to 60 cars. They use the streets twice a day. That's 60 additional cars in the neighborhood per weekday. Now, rather than 60 cars in the streets, we would have 120. Then you added 19 buses entering and exiting, so 19 times 2 is 38 buses on the streets every day. Add the additional cars and the buses, that's 60 plus 38, and we have 98 additional vehicles in the neighborhood. That's 63%. Sorry. When we look at the total percentage of outside traffic that would be coming into this neighborhood compared to the current traffic, we go from 60 staff to and from school to 120, add the buses 38 times, and we have 163% increase from the usual residential traffic. I asked AI a final question. Is increasing the normal neighborhood traffic by 163% in a small neighborhood without sidewalks a good thing to do? Answer, increasing traffic by 163% in a small neighborhood without sidewalks is generally considered highly detrimental. The drastic surge in volume compromises pedestrian safety, diminishes neighborhood character, and creates significant quality of life issues. And the percentage is even higher for the first portion of Noyes Street, which is probably the most dangerous section. The increase in traffic there is 226%. It really is overwhelming for this little neighborhood, and we know that it would not make anyone safer. We don't need to put a building between cars and buses. Barriers work. We know this from experience. The change is much more about increasing the speed of cars going through the school grounds. Had the neighborhood been invited to provide input in 2025, all of this would have been brought to light. Well, maybe not the AI part, but the neighborhood was not asked for input. It was asked for feedback in March of 2026, after the plan had been decided. It's not too late to rectify this. If the buses are routed to the front of the school, then the back of the school would be needed for emergency and service vehicles only. The school could be pushed back at least 20 feet, providing additional space in front for 2 lanes with barriers and walkways. The building plan would not change at all. It is simply a matter of moving those little sticks that I see out there right now in the backyard.
Ms. Cousins, if you could just wrap up your
I'm sorry.
significantly over your time.
And some creativity, 2 sentences, and some creativity with the additional space in front of the school could provide a flow of traffic that is both safe and more efficient than the current flow. Once construction starts, it's going to be too late.
Thank you.
I thank you for your time, and I thank you for all your work. I know how many hours you put into this, and we do appreciate it, but we just disagree on this traffic thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Moore?
Thankfully, people that spoke before me spoke a lot of my points, so I'll make this brief. First, thank you for what you do for us, this community. I know it's a thankless job, and I appreciate you doing what you do. My name is Chris Moore. I live at 9 Cypress Street, and I've lived there for about 18 years. Here are some of the quotes that we heard on the June 4th meeting. I haven't had a lot of time with the new traffic pattern suggestions. The traffic operations didn't see all the options. We need 7-foot sidewalks. We need 12-foot bypass lanes for emergency services. Pedestrians crossing over the roadway is a concern. Ideally, we need fences to guide the students. Safety is priority number 1. My priority is to make the campus as safe as possible without losing athletic fields, unquote. All points regarding safety must also have concern for the neighborhoods as well, yet there is a severe lack of detail about the neighborhood safety. Here are some more quotes from the June 4th meeting. I quote, "A turning analysis was completed. There are adequate lines of sight. You might get sidewalks in the future. This isn't a heavy traffic flow area," unquote. Here's the reality for us living in Noyes Cypress Street area. The school speed limit is 5 miles per hour on campus and 20 miles an hour when school's coming and going during drop-off and pickup times. Not only are Cypress and Noyes heavy traffic flow streets already, they are posted for 30 miles an hour, which happens to be Clinton Street, South Street, and Broadway's speed limit. So our streets have the same speed limit. When school lets out and sport practice ends, it's even busier. All too frequently, we see drivers holding phones and speeding down our narrow streets coming directly from the school. I see that pretty regular as I'm a retiree standing in my driveway quite often doing projects. I see kids walking in the street where cars are waiting for the kids to get out of the way. If there's not a car parked on the side of the road, the car has to wait. On any normal day, pedestrians and bicycle riders are occasionally a lost driver going east to west on Cypress, going the wrong way on our street. The lack of sight lines on the curve is dangerous even now. My question would be, and this is, will large rescue vehicles get down these roads if buses are broken down on our streets? I go back to what they said about we need to pull over for the school of 12 feet. We don't have 12 feet to pull over. Will Noyes and Cypress Street be labeled as a school zone with all the safety that comes with that? Who pays for these upgrades? Who decides on the upgrades? Our community entails both the school and the neighborhoods. They are symbiotic. They should work together. The school board's responsibilities do not stop at the school gates. The people who live in the abutting neighborhoods have a right to safety as well. We should not have to be an afterthought or any less of a concern for safety once buses and cars leave campus. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Neela Paul?
Hi. Thank you for the hearing tonight. Appreciate it. I wanted to first speak ultimately, I do oppose the proposed traffic plan. And I want to support Barb Higgins' proposed routes. It was perplexing to me that any of them were discounted because of car traffic crossing bus traffic. The reason I was puzzled was, for the most part, I have heard and I have also seen firsthand that currently on the campus, the buses go first, then the cars. And your traffic engineer completely discounted Barb's plans because there was an area where cars and buses were going to be using the same roadway. If the buses always go first and then the cars, that should not be a reason to discount the plan. I think that's all I'm going to say.
Rebecca, I'm sorry, I can't read the last name.
It's Swamala.
Can you just spell that for our record?
It's S as in Sam, U-O, M as in Mark, A-L-A.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Swamala. and I live at 21 Noyes Street, which happens to be the corner of Noyes and Cypress Street. So you can imagine what I'm going to say. No one knows the traffic patterns better than those of us who live in the neighborhood. Traffic planners cannot simply take road measurements and rely solely on them for planning. On-the-ground conditions and experience throughout the year must be factored in. I'm shocked that the traffic planners cannot come up with an alternative, especially since the new school is not even under construction yet. Plans can and should be changeable. There is a frustrating resistance to change and a deep investment by the consultants in the original traffic plan. This is not appropriate. Both the traffic planners and the school board must be open to alternatives. I also believe the planning board's feedback should be respected. We all have to seek their approval, and this board should too. The proposed traffic plan creates a dangerous situation for pedestrians especially, and one that was recognized in the past. It will cause innumerable traffic issues, as people have been pointing out, which will fall squarely on the bus drivers, the children, and the residents of the neighborhood. I am angry that you do not respect the feedback of the people who know this area the best, and that you will not act to prevent a poor traffic decision. I'm also sad because if the traffic pattern stands, I will be selling my house and leaving the area. As buses back up on Noyes and Cypress Streets, the exhaust and the noise will be unbearable. I won't be able to get out of my driveway, and I will be afraid to walk the streets. It makes me very sad that I will likely be leaving my house. I'd just like to encourage you, it's better to make changes now than repeat the mistakes of the past and have a costly fix in the future.
Thank you. Melanie Anukra? Melanie?
Oh, I'm not speaking, I'm not.
Okay.
I just signed in.
Okay, no problem. Is there anyone else signed in or anyone else who would like to speak? Anyone? Mr.
I'll sign in. Thank you. My name is James Richards. I am a resident of Ward 3, a former school board member, and a member of the building committee. I just want to say a couple words. First, you all know that I had great concerns about putting the school in this too small site in this neighborhood for the reason that some of them are coming to light, right? But that window has closed. And overwhelmingly, the residents of that area wanted the school there. We had, when I was on the board, outlined all of the issues, all of the potential problems. But that being said, I want to commend the board for bringing all of the proposed traffic flows and the traffic plans to the traffic engineers for evaluation. I sat at the meeting a few nights ago, and they thoroughly went through all of these plans. And they explained to the building committee the reasons that they were recommending the currently being considered plan. The traffic engineers for the architect, Harvey Construction, the city component of this, as well as a parent on the board of the building committee, all agree that the current plan is the safest and best option for this site, and that using the current route would not pose a safety risk for the neighborhood. Now, I had one time sat on that side of this table. And the thing is the people like me that are sitting on this side of the table, well, we have the luxury of telling you what we'd like, what we want to be true, what we believe is important, and what would benefit us the most. As the board, I know you have the responsibility to decide what would be the safest and best route for the approximately 800 students from all over the city that come to that, as well as those in the neighborhood, the teachers that work there and the staff that work there, and as well as the taxpayer and, I don't know, approximately 35,000 citizens that are a part of our school district. Don't quote me on a number, it's an approximation. Okay. I want to thank you tonight for doing the thorough research, for hiring experts as opposed to speculation, for listening to everyone, for voting for the students, not only of today, but for the next 50 years. So I just want to say I appreciate all of your efforts, and I don't envy you your decisions. I know they're difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anyone else? Please sign in.
My name is Linda Zolo. I'm a resident of 15 Noyes Street. After that first meeting that was held at Runlet, I created a petition, and I and a few of my neighbors walked around the neighborhood gathering signatures of opposition to what the plan was. I don't know if you all are aware that that petition mysteriously got lost, and a month later we discovered, after attending that meeting here, where the traffic consultant shared her view of what could be a reasonable alternative of going down Princeton Street, it was then discovered that that was missing, and we kind of regrouped and started all over again and handed that in. And I hope everyone had the opportunity of seeing that and seeing the extent of support for opposition that was in that neighborhood in 2 days gathered, because we were told there's going to be a meeting, the school board will be meeting about this. So we felt the pressure in 2 days to get as many signatures as possible. But I have no question that had we had more time, virtually every house in that neighborhood would have signed on, because it is just, you know, kind of untenable, as people have said, to be a resident in that neighborhood and to not understand how misguided the plan feels to all of us. I wasn't going to read because I'm not a good speaker, but I decided to do so because I wanted this to end on a note of opposition in light of how many people are here. I and many of my neighbors continue to question, what is the impetus to change the current Runlet transportation route from Conant and Norwich, with its sidewalks, to one that negatively impacts the lives of over 100 families on Noyes, Cypress, and the College Street residents? And why at this point, before most construction has started, is there such a refusal to really work out a different plan? There has been much energy directed into rebuttals of suggestions from Noyes, Cypress, and College Street residents, but less apparent effort into incorporating some of the community's concerns in a credible plan. From my reading of the 2024 Manual for Planning and Construction of School Buildings, it says that traffic control structures such as islands and barricades can assist in keeping things separate. That sounds like a reasonable solution to the neighbors in our neighborhood. But the school board and traffic consultant adamantly refuse, or so it seems, I will add, to consider the least intrusive and least destructive approach to traffic control, and opt to impose their will on our neighborhood, despite our concerns about safety, traffic, air quality, access to emergency services, etc. Transportation consultants and many board members' responses have repeatedly negated the safety concerns on our streets and highlighted the apparently higher value of the school campus. Safety for all is an achievable goal if there is a will. The lack of transparency and obfuscation over the past 2 months has drained the hope and confidence of this neighborhood that we had, that our thoughts and concerns would be received with respect. I hope that you reconsider that plan. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Mr. Cashman, I just want to clarify, my understanding is there has been a change in that the buses will not be going left out of Noyes onto South Street, they'll only be going right? Or am I incorrect?
That is a proposal within,
Okay.
And then once that's accepted, if that's still in there without any comments against it, then.
Okay. How close are we to our property line if we move the school 20 feet back?
I'll give an accurate measurement, but by sight, I'd say you're about 50 feet or so, 50, 60
And that
feet.
include-
So if you pushed back, you'd be that much closer.
Okay. And the access, we're required to have the access
Yes,
road, right?
yes,
Okay.
for emergency vehicles.
So, and what width is required for the access?
I believe it's 18 feet.
The building committee, as you may know, did not make a recommendation to this board for any changes. We certainly can have a discussion, and there's a motion, but just a couple, things that occurred to me as we were sitting here, especially on the barriers, because that is something we've talked about, and why is it moving at all? And, well, the building's going to be in a different place, so we have to have a traffic plan, and we're required to, by the state and by the city, to do a traffic plan for that. We're also required, as we've been working on this, the current building campus has no stormwater drain system. And we could stay and keep doing that as we did, but now we're building a new school, and we are now required to do a stormwater system, because you can't, standards change, they get upgraded, and you can't just keep doing what you're doing when you're building new. So the consultant did show a barriers approach, but it takes a lot more space under current standards. So that's why it doesn't look like it looks on some of the drawings, because it just takes a lot of space. And one of the things we didn't discuss last week is that space, right now there is a building in that space, and that building will be there through construction and through probably the first year of operation of the school until they take it down. I have gone through tons of plans. I've spent a lot of time talking to Mr. Cashman and our engineers, our volunteer engineer. And I wish I could come up with the solution, but at some point I have to say I have multiple engineers, volunteer and paid, telling me that this is the safest for the school and for the neighborhood that meets the current requirements. And including, I know you think that one of the engineers is actually in a butter, lives at the end of Noyes Street and South Street, so it is impacted by this route, and says this is the best, and still says it's the best option for for everyone. I wish I could come up with a different plan that passed muster, but I do think there was a comment that Ms. Brown had mentioned last week that, well, these plans hadn't gone to the traffic. That's because they had come in that week, and I think people had really tried to evaluate them with an open mind and not just the person we're paying, but one of the members of the building committee is a roadway engineer, and I asked her, and she took a lot of her time over the past several weeks looking at alternatives to see if there was one that worked. So at a certain point, I understand where people are coming from, and if it was my neighborhood, I would probably be where you're sitting too, but I don't feel comfortable substituting my judgment for people who do this for a living, for the state, for the city, as well as for the school district, so. Yep, Ms. Campbell.
Sorry, Ms. Higgins. A few people mentioned your plan, and I'm so sorry if I overlooked it. Where did we see that?
There were like 5 versions of it that came.
Was that referring to like Dawn's plan?
The second plan that she went over last week, or maybe it was the other way around.
email it to you.
Okay, just to make sure. If it was the second one, then I have it, but email it too, just in case. Thank you. I'll make sure I didn't overlook.
Are we doing a full report out for the agenda? The middle school?
So that's the traffic. I'm gonna tell, for sort of everyone's, like, if you have a motion to make, this is the time. Otherwise, we haven't been voting on things that we're not changing in the plan. But, we are at sort of a decision point, and things will need to go forward if nothing changes. You have a question, Ms. Sadowski?
No, I'm really concerned. When I heard small neighborhood without sidewalks, it just makes me think, one of the many reasons why the folks up near the Broken Ground site were so concerned is because the current traffic situation is so untenable. It was one of the many reasons why. And I fear that we're repeating a similar process with that site as we are with this traffic situation now. So my concerns are more like process related. Like, how do we adequately communicate what's happening outside of this room with the folks who are directly impacted? Because in the end, I've sat through a lot of the planning and the building meeting and all of that, and I do remain convinced that the engineers, both paid and volunteer, know what they're talking about. And yet, when I go to put it in plain language about why we're making these decisions, we worked really hard as a board, and I recognize our shared responsibility to communicating those decisions outward, but it's such a loss because it's difficult. And, I am a representative of the whole city, and I feel an obligation to listen to the voices in the room. And yet, Pam, you said it's hard because we know what the experts say.
It's not that I'm not listening. It's
Yeah.
just that I can't find a way to give folks what they want without ignoring all of the other professional advice they're getting. And I will admit that professionals can be wrong, but they have ethical standards, professional standards that they have to meet. And or lose their licenses. These are licensed individuals. Ms. Higgins.
I would just say, I would feel a lot better about the whole thing if we had ever been shown what would happen if the city suddenly said, nope, you can't use noise in Cypress Street. That whole neighborhood's off the table. You'll have to figure out a way to manage it in its current ideation or its current. If our engineers had to come up with that plan, I would love to see what they would come up with and why it would be so bad. I think this would answer a lot of their questions. Right now, everything gets compared to what's in place. And so it's easy to say, nope, not as good. Like, for whatever reasons, my very basic idea was bad, is being compared against not using just that road. It's being compared to having the option of using the neighborhood, which at the end of it all might be the best way to go. But I've never seen an expert or a volunteer lay something, okay, if we couldn't use that neighborhood, this is what we'd have to do, and here's why it won't work. I think that information would be invaluable.
Well, I think there were several variations of that shown last week and at other building
But
committee
it's always
meetings.
compared to
Committee meetings. No, there was a variation, okay, but it would mean that I don't know what the temporary solution would be when the school, but it would be where the school is now. It would be huge barriers. It would be taking 1 to 2 athletic fields I mean, they did show they showed multiple variations of that last week. That, you know, and potentially, you know, those would be the, Ms. Campbell.
I am so sorry, but I do hear where you're coming from, and it may be that they did. Maybe it's how it was presented to us in the community, and it's very similar to Sarah. I'm so torn because absolutely, like Nicole being here, she is a traffic engineer. She works for a competitor, and she's like, no, this is the best way. I would have done this myself too. But I hear community, and we have a community that wanted the school here and wants to be supportive. I do hear you, Ms. Higgins, and are they able to, can we ask them to do that? And even though it sounds like they kind of did, it's not exactly what they did. It did sound like they were doing a rebuttal to what folks were saying.
I get it, but they did it, and it is the pros and cons, and there are pros and cons, and they went through those. But I feel like you said if this was all on one side,
that's fair.
This is what it would look like. It would mean you'd lose an athletic. You know, these are all the things that would happen. And
right.
Did they move the Abbott Downing parking spaces over there off?
There were actually versions where they discussed what the Abbott Downing, you know, moving the Abbott Downing parking spaces. There were like 5 versions that she went through last week.
Lost completely or relocated to the other side, possibly.
Yeah.
Going back to my point about process, I mean, I think we all share the common value of maintaining public trust.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're all deeply committed to that. And so when I think about how we are responsible for communicating our process around decision making, when I listen to community input, even tonight, even after looking at all the iterations of plans, I hear things from this crowd that I hadn't considered. For example, the staff parking in addition to the buses. It just had not occurred to me. That being said, I think that many folks would come to the same determination that everyone here has. I mean, we seem pretty unanimous around the fact that to follow the engineer advice. Am I wrong? So, I mean, I suspect, you know.
And the parking, like, it is a lot of parking. It's more parking than we have because, again, when you build new, you have to meet all of these new requirements.
Right. Now that's
Yes.
And this is one area where I am so jaded because living across the street from the Broken Ground School, I saw how a new build we don't have adequate parking. We have people parking on dirt. We have people who do not stop at stop signs. The person who said, you know, what they see from their driveway is the same thing I see from my driveway. And even worse is when it's district staff. So that's hard. And I just want to recognize that.
Krista McCall's got like 5 parking spaces.
I
hear ya.
We used to have more back in the day. That got worse.
Yes.
Please excuse my perhaps not remembering correctly. I thought at some point we had talked about the current road going into Runlet. We can't use that because it would be out of code. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
What I think we talked about is that, well, the school's going to be in a different place, so it's not quite the same, but what we'd have to build to current standards. So
Exactly.
with the current widths, that's why, like, what Nicole Fox said to me is, I'm an engineer and everything, and I do this for a living, and everything still takes more space than I think it's going to take when I first start out, so that you think you can fit all of this, and because of the widths required under the current codes, you can't. You know, you can, with the trade-offs of you lose athletic fields and you lose.
Abbott Downing would lose some of their.
Abbott Downing would lose parking.
And also field space.
And fields. So that I am remembering correctly that it's not as easy as just saying we're going to maintain the same lanes that we use currently because there have been changes and they now would require us to have more space. We can't just use what we've had currently. Okay, that's what I was remembering. I just
sort of like we're no longer to be just dumping things into the stream over there.
Right.
It's the grandfather clause.
Yes. Okay.
Ms. Higgins.
This is not a new issue. The current building at Runlet, when there was a big addition made in the 80s, where the 100 wing was added and the new activity room that's now the old activity room. At any rate, There was also a time in the early 80s where Concord High wasn't ready, and so the community had to split Runlet. So Concord High went to school from 6:30 to 11:30 in the morning. I was a senior that year. Yeah. So you were at Runlet still. Yeah. And then Runlet went from 1:30 to 4:30. You got to sleep in. Yeah. I was done with school before noon. But at that time, obviously now we have 2 schools worth of people being dropped off, and buses started using the back of Runlet. It was years before the college streets were one way. That was when McKee Square got busy. That was a bit later. And so when we went back to being in our own places, the busing continued in the back of the building. It ended up only lasting about a year, as I recall. I have a couple of bus drivers I could call if they're still alive and ask. But it was very, very dangerous, and it was primarily the narrowness of the streets and all of that. When I was at Runlet, and I don't know if it was this way when you were there, bus students got dropped off 15 minutes ahead of walkers. So it would be 8:30, if our day is 8:30 to 3:30, bus students were dropped off at 8:30, walkers not till 8:40, bus students came a bit early. At any rate, they were there 15 minutes earlier, and then at the end of the day, they left 15 minutes early. I remember sitting in my 7th period class and, okay, if you're at bus 1, 2, 3, and 4, you may go. But they all went, and the buses left, and then walkers were dismissed. So we had this like homeroom sort of period that started the day and ended the day. Was it that way when you were there? It was. So my 9th grade would have been your 7th. So it might have been your freshman year, your 7th grade year. You might not remember, but it was 2 separate drop-off times, and it was the same thing, get the buses in and out. The motivation behind that was scheduling. Elementary and middle school, I think, followed the same schedule, and the high school was different, so it was around how do you time drop-off and pick-up. This is an ongoing problem with this, or challenge with this site, so I think it's important that we don't doom ourselves to repeated history. If we don't pay attention to history, we're doomed to repeat it. I think there's a lot of history that emphasizes the lack of that neighborhood working. So that also, I think, is a piece of where people come from. So I just know that in my time in Concord, there's been like 4 different iterations of how do we drop off and pick up kids. For years, the buses stayed at the bottom, and kids came down and got on their buses. They were all lined up on South Street, and when they were full, off they went. They didn't even go up. So, those things are also things that have been, I don't know if those options have been looked at all, staggering a schedule or looking at South Street more. But these are just historical truths that in my mind add to the conversation and also feed the anxiety that people have.
Mr. Cashman, did you have a?
So when we heard that, I reached out to 4 or 5 former. One was a former superintendent. One was the director of transportation that started in 1972, went all the way up through the late 80s. And I asked each one of them, what was the bus traffic? We're hearing that you used to have bus traffic that was in the backside of Runlet. They had no more than 5 buses, and that bus situation continued, Mr. Richard can attest to, up until last year.
Was that the small buses?
They were the smaller buses.
Right. Those have been that
And
bad
so
forever, yeah.
last year, we moved them to out front with everybody else. But I wanted to not guess at it. I took the time, I looked them up, I found phone numbers, I talked to 5 different people, and they all attested that there was never a time where they had all of the buses out back. So just as a point of clarity, I think I'd like to emphasize that when we hear things, as administrators, it's our duty to go out and investigate and find out the facts, because we might not have been here at that time.
Yeah, no, I remember the smaller buses being dropped off in the back.
And that's what it was limited to.
Yeah, okay.
It was about 4 or 5.
Yep. Well, that double session year was tricky.
Anyone have anything else? If not, I'm going to move on to invite Harvey Construction and the architects up to talk about the value engineering recommendations from the building committee. Mr. Cashman.
While we'll do that, can I give a small little update, because there are some things happening on the site that are exciting. Mobilization is continuing as of this week. We started last week. We started putting up the fence posts. Construction fence posts will be a 6-foot barrier all the way around. We're going to start moving earth tomorrow. The site bill has been approved by a third-party engineer, so that's going to start also getting loaded onto the site over the next 3 weeks as we begin our pressure monitoring of the site as well.
So there were some social posts about why do we need the fence? Could you just explain why we're putting up the fence? That people seem to think it was just a waste of money.
No, not at all.
Construction fence.
It's a requirement, and I ran into a very nice grandmother today who was actually walking her grandson across the site. We had a very nice conversation, but I emphasized to her, we've got extremely heavy, big equipment rolling around, and that fence is the primary purpose, is for the safety of everybody, not just those looking and wanting to see, but everything that goes on the site. So safety is number one in that regard. But it did enlighten me of one thing. Once we get started and we get more of a controlled, safe site, I would like to take anyone interested through in a tour so you could see. It's a pretty neat thing we're doing over there. So anyway.
Excited for that. And Ms. Meeker, I'm sorry, did you have one?
No, it's okay. I'm sure this was discussed elsewhere, but I saw some, young gentlemen who could not help themselves vandalizing like the side of a grocery store recently. And I immediately flashed to how secure is our construction site? Shenanigans are going to happen, but I'm just curious, like, how are you feeling around the security of the site with the heavy machinery and the equipment, like,
I feel
as far
secure.
as...
We currently have exterior cameras. Mr. Richard mentioned to me that he was looking at them over the weekend, but we are going to add additional cameras. But by the end of the week, we'll have a completely secured fence with locks and gates on it.
Great.
So with talking with the police department, knowing that we have cameras, knowing we have a secure site, I feel very comfortable.
Great. And will there be no trespassing signs posted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And we had discussed, and Mr. Cashman and I had discussed this last week too, with some sort of signage where people can find out where they can get updates on the project.
We've been speaking to HMFH. and
Maybe a
we're
little
having
QR
project
code.
sign with a QR code where you can get updates. And, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So some good news coming in from Harvey Construction on our first bid package. So you want to update us on the overall numbers first?
I think
You're on,
am I
Mr.
supposed to cue it up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I will cue it
Jack's
up
gonna
first.
cue it up.
So in front of you, in your board book, and I think it was posted online, and there are copies there on the table, you will see a listing of numbers. It will explain this is the product of the building committee that met on the 4th. So let me first start off by the first line of September 10th. The construction cost at that time at the design development phase, and this was the construction budget, not the total project cost, the construction budget that was approved by the board on October 23rd, 2025, was $141,301,360. Let's fast forward to the next phase of the architectural process, which are the construction documents. So on May 8th, 2026, the construction cost at 60% of construction documents, that 141 is now 136,867,231. And then on May 8th also was the early bid package. So if you remember in the estimates that we gave back in October 23rd, the night you passed the budget, down on the bottom there's a little asterisk footnote that says we were going to do an early bid package and we estimated that would save $2,119,520. That $2,119,000 is now $2,536,616. Okay? So before going into value engineering, the construction cost at 60% as of the night of the building committee on June 4th, the 141 is down to 134,330,615. So that is where the building committee was starting from in doing this exercise, which is the value engineering portion. So at a high level, all the items that do not have the orange highlight were ones that were either accepted or rejected, okay? All the ones in orange were potentially accepted, but they wanted clarification, or rejected, but wanted clarification before they fully rejected it. That's the difference between the two.
I think the system is not quite, because there's some that I think.
So give me an example, point out an item number.
18,
So,
alternative baffles.
yep, so some of these we do not have a cost for,
yeah.
and that is why they may have a zero. So
But
we
I
have
think
to
we
come
said
back.
yes. There's nothing in the yes, no for that.
Yeah.
Right, because we don't have anything for that yet.
You did say yes, though.
But we did say yes.
Yes.
Yep. That's a clerical error.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Jack.
So.
Pay no attention to the man behind the keyboard.
I understand we don't know how much it's gonna save.
Yeah. Yes.
But we
But-
want you to look into
Yep.
it or do it.
Yes.
Part of our, I'll just jump in real quick if I could. Part of our goal in that discussion was if the committee was not going to entertain that as even an option, we wanted to know that before we got the pricing, so we could stop that effort. Frankly, not waste people's time is what that came down to. So we are still actively working on this list for the $0 items. That's a coordinated effort between Harvey and HMFH to come to an agreement of what those alternates and value engineering and value management goals are. And then we would bring that additional information back as indicated with the yellow, orange color, whatever that is. That we'll bring that back to the committee for final position on that.
So unless anyone objects, the building committee voted this line by line. I don't know that we need to do that. What I think would be helpful is if you give a high level of the ones with dollar amounts that we've accepted, a little explanation of the rejections. There weren't many, but there were some. And then, sort of a little bit on the outstanding items that we're waiting for dollars for before we make decisions.
Sure. I'm going to try and figure out how I can streamline this.
Like monumental scenic 4A.
Can I ask some clarifying questions?
Yeah, go for it.
I apologize. I watched the building committee on 1.5 time, so I may not have fully understood this. Are these items, because we had done a round of value engineering before the total cost, are these new items, are these new opportunities for reductions? Or are these things that now that we have moved forward, that we can add them back in? Can you just give me a quick, what are
These are all reductions.
These are all reductions.
They're all
Yes
reductions.
means taking it out.
That's right. Yes, you want to save the money, so yes, take the reduction.
So these are things that at some point along the way, we thought, okay, we should have these. And then this came to the building committee and said, these are further cuts you can make to save money.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in a simple way, it's part of the reason you have a construction manager on your team is to evaluate the design and engineering of the project throughout the design process so that we can bring these to the forefront as opposed to having it go down a path of designing it and then realizing you can't afford it.
Gotcha.
So we're
No,
trying to
I
help
love that.
you to afford
it's
it.
just I hearken back to when we were making sad cuts.
We were.
And we were like, maybe if we save money, we can add some stuff back in. So I was just curious if any part of this conversation was items where we were adding.
None of these
Nothing
items
was
are
contemplated. Okay,
considered
thank you.
adding.
I'm just helping.
And part of how that process works, so a value engineering and value management log that was done back in September and approved in October as part of the budget. That list lived during the continued development of the design, and it doesn't live anymore because
Okay.
it's either in the design or we found new items to do that. So that list was a moment in time.
Okay.
This is the list.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I would just say there is one thing, it's actually built into the price, that was an open item when we did the value engineering, but it is in the 136, which is a metal roof. Because, I think a recommendation was made that it was better for solar, and we were there, I think mostly anyway, but that's built in.
It is. We were, at the time, we were looking at somewhere around $900,000 worth of savings to go to an asphalt roof. We didn't know where the solar was going to be relative to that installation. Solar panels are far better installation and execution on a standing seam metal roof because they don't penetrate the roof, so you're not putting literally thousands of holes in an asphalt roof that you would have to do if you did
Yeah.
asphalt. So
Okay.
we were able to afford it,
Mhm.
so we didn't have to tag that as a
Great.
cost-saving measure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Metal's also a lot more durable,
Yes.
regardless of solar.
That's right.
Okay. Sounds awesome in the rain, too.
So one of the things, so just real quick, I'll just go through them real item by item, just to breeze through them, and if there's any questions, you can ask me. But area brick pattern, there's a series of different types of pattern, whether it be turned or shaped brick. HMFH has agreed to minimize some of that because there's custom patterns and shapes that need to be made to make those patterns on the facade. So the reason it's yellow or gold or whatever color this is, mustard, there we go.
Goldenrod.
Goldenrod, is
That one covered.
we would want to present that to the committee to have them sign off on the new proposed patterning because it will change the aesthetic of the building, not significantly in my mind, but at the same time, it's something worth.
And we
including.
don't have a dollar figure.
And
for
we
it.
don't have a dollar figure yet because we haven't decided what percentage of that reduction is going to be. Number two is really a construction methodology standpoint. It's about the radiant floor heating and how that goes into the sustainable credits that are being targeted. There is different ways in which that can be installed. It really comes down to means and methods. I don't want to bore you with the details, but that's why we targeted that. It does require us to work with HMFH and the consulting engineers on how we can target that value. So we're going to look at that because it may work out that it'll be a simpler execution or more streamlined execution that might not benefit you from a tax break standpoint. So your tax incentives will be decreased if we go a certain direction, but that decrease might not be equal to what it would be to save in the project. So that's why that one's there. Asphalt sidewalks, we did talk about this, I think, last year as well with the DD. There were certain things that we targeted for that, not all of them. There's obviously still some concrete sidewalks. So everyone agreed that they will perform just as well, and to a certain extent, they might perform better. That one was somewhat tied to the rejected number 8. The reason it was rejected, which is the radiant snow melt system, is the front concrete apron walkway out in front of the school is piped with radiant heating so that the maintenance and facility staff doesn't have to go out and shovel and salt and sand, which is what deteriorates concrete. So that's part of the reason why we entertain the asphalt in number 3. 4A, B, and C were simply components of the exterior design in the north courtyard that were very well designed, and perhaps it could be simplified. So we entertain that for some significant savings. So that's what those are. Hydro seeding came up both in number 5 and number 6. The reason number 6 is still goldenrod is because if there's an opportunity to sod the sports fields and get on them earlier, why take the savings? So that's kind of the conversation that needs to be had, and we're going to have that. But we would take hydro seeding elsewhere in the remainder of the lawns for that $100,000 savings. All the
Can we
lawns,
ask questions on
yep,
that?
all the lawns and grass are indeed irrigated. So that was part of something we entertained last year that was not accepted, so we didn't even bring it back up again. So.
Did you have another question?
Well, I'm curious if there was much discussion around the hydro seed, just from, as a personal anecdote, we have a full acre in our backyard. Half was hydro seed and half was regular, and the hydro seed is amazing, and the regular grass is not. So I'm just, like, in terms of getting our kids on good grass.
I
Okay.
did go off.
Everyone felt good about it.
I did
Okay.
go off script to another consulting engineer I'm working with on another project and asked her opinion,
Mhm.
and she actually suggested that hydro seeding can potentially be better than sod
Mhm.
because it grows in the environment that it's in, as opposed to growing in another environment and then having to establish in the new environment. So I'm no lawn expert. I just put in what people asked me to do.
On the sports field until we
Yeah.
get some of those answers. Yeah.
Are we planning to go through every single one of these at this time?
Well, I think he was going to give us a summary, and
Okay.
then we'd vote on them as a group.
Okay, so we're gonna go through every single one of them again. Okay, just thinking of time.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know how best to do.
But the point is that like we had a building committee meeting,
Yes.
and I think part of just like the public's has a responsibility for watching the meetings that we have. They can't come to a meeting and say that they didn't hear it if they also themselves haven't done the work, because I can't go door to door knocking. The same thing goes for board members, is we do have a responsibility for meetings that we do not attend, to also make sure that we are listening to those meetings. So when we come to another meeting, that we can also ask those questions that we have from those previous meetings, so that we're not sitting here for another hour going through the same thing from another meeting.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Yes, I was trying to get the 5-minute version, but
Golden-
it's hard to do this in 5 minutes.
It's hard to do this in 5 minutes. So the bottom line is goldenrod is stuff that we still owe information on. The yeses are all yeses, of course, and we saved $1.3 million targeted right now. It has an opportunity to be something more, obviously, because there are zeros that need to be reflected. So we continue to do that over the next 3 weeks, because HMFH is issuing documents before the 4th of July for us to go out and hit the street and bid for our GMP this fall. There's your summary.
But if people have questions on individual items, they should feel free to
Yes.
ask that.
And I do think part of our role as board representatives is that we need to be proactive about communicating to people. I think expecting people to parse meeting minutes is a bit much for the average citizen, and I do recognize that we have shared responsibility in communicating in plain language to our constituents.
And certainly, I think we can do better when it
Yes.
comes to that, for sure. I agree with you on that. But at some level, I can't go door to door, knocking on doors, explaining things either. So there has to be, a
Yeah.
balance.
FAQ or something.
So I think 24, the remove color additive, we were waiting for information on that as opposed to it being a no.
Yeah, and Jack gave the conservative no to not save any more money, to show the least amount of money we could save based on those coming back. But yes, it was about 30-something thousand, if I remember
Which one are you looking
correctly.
at, 24?
24, it
Yeah,
says a
37,
no
7.
and 0.
Yeah, I did that purposely so you could feel good about the direction you're going. I didn't want to add it and then somebody say, no, we got to not
So
cut
we
it.
got an estimate on that. But we're going to bring samples, so we.
That's
to the
why.
building
That's why
it was a
Okay.
no.
So,
that
but
we were gonna.
it's sort of a
Yeah.
tentative, like more information.
Yeah.
Yes, I just don't want it to get lost
Nope.
either.
It will not be
Okay.
lost.
It will not.
This is the list.
If there's no further questions, I will move that we accept the additional $1,361,794 in value engineering reductions.
Seconded.
Seconded by Ms. Sadowski. Further discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Don't go anywhere. Because it didn't get on the agenda, but we had tabled a vote on lead plans to this meeting. So if anyone wants to bring it off the table, now is the opportunity to do that. Going once, going twice.
It was my motion to
Right.
not.
So you have to move to take it off the
I
table.
would move to take my motion off the table.
Is there a second? Second by Ms. Higgins. All in favor of removing the motion from the table, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, how many was that? 1, 2, 3. Okay, motion carries. Ms. Minotti, you want to speak to your motion?
Sure. In my mind, the sustainability efforts are both for their own value as well as the cost savings in operational savings that they will produce. My understanding is that originally we were going to get a certification which was different from LEED because it would give us points in the state building aid. Obviously, that's not at issue anymore. My understanding is that it will cost $14,000 to get the certification. I personally don't see the value in the certification itself, as long as we do all of the sustainability measures, all of the efficiency measures, the HVAC commissioning, and we will realize all of the operational savings. I asked a friend who is in the efficiency business, building science business, and his quote stuck with me. He said, LEED certification is something that fancy developers in Boston get for their apartment buildings to attract high-end customers. To me, that's kind of what it is. And so I don't see value in that for our school.
Ms. Boucher?
I wasn't at the board meeting in May when this originally came up, but Ms. Minot, you said about the organic
farming and the organic food. I certainly like to know that through a third-party certification that my food is actually registered organic so that I know what the standards are met for a layperson. This is a topic that did go to the Sustainability Committee. It then went to the Building Committee, which the Building Committee moved it to this board. So it has already gone through multiple committees, including professionals on the Sustainability Committee. And I don't want to discount the great discussion that we had there and thoughtful vote that then moved with more members of the community to the Building Committee for then members of the public who also voted to approve that to this, to then bring it up yet again. So that is why I'm voting against removing lead.
Mr. Cashman, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share?
I do. Like Liz had mentioned, we out of the gate, we wanted to build a CHIPS, Collaboration in High Performing Schools. That went away. When it went away, obviously LEAD took over. I think it's important. I think it's something that the Sustainability Committee spent almost 2 years, volunteers from the community that have a vested interest in it. I think it's our community. I think that with the commissioning that we're going to do anyway, I do see your point. But I do think that, we've got a lot to be proud of in Concord. We've built 3 CHIPS sustainable buildings. We're about ready to build a 4th. We kind of, like I said, out of the gate, we said we were going to do that. And we're at that time. We do have to make that decision, whether we're going to do it or not. So I support it.
Further discussion? Mr.
I'm thinking back to when we had the public comment on this, and there were a few people who had mentioned just about if it's the spending of that $14,000 to get that certification, the cost benefit analysis of that. And on paper, it might not seem like it's a lot when we're working with the numbers that we're working with, but just thinking back to the other point that we've talked about with public perception as well, when we have our constituents coming and saying like, what is this certification going to do? Why are we spending money on it? That's something that just comes to my mind.
Anyone else? Ms. Meeker?
Yeah. I mean, we're talking a lot about communicating things to the larger community. To be able to say we have LEED certification is something, it's terminology that people understand, and it's the end result of a process that we've already been through. In terms of cost, it's less than, the majority of the line items that we encounter on a regular basis. So I feel like, you could also say, I've taken all the classes, but I don't need the diploma. You want the diploma. You want to be able to have something to show for the work that you've done. And I think that, especially if we've had the Sustainability Committee already do this work, that we just need to go ahead and move forward with what we have already planned to do.
Further discussion? The motion is to remove the LEED certification budget item and process. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, no. Nays have it. The motion is defeated. Next up, thank you. You can go.
You're welcome.
Next up, the teacher contracts and the tutor contracts. Is that Ms. Guerin, or Mr. Dunn?
Leave it up to you.
Good evening. Sorry. For the Concord educational tutors, the negotiations has been ratified by the tutors, and we're bringing forward a 1-year contract that includes a change of a 2% increase for 1 year.
Would someone like to move the tutor's contract for discussion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Meeker. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Higgins. Discussion. 1 year because of why?
Do you want to take that?
They just, to be quite frank,
membership and organization. And when we met with the representative from NEA that was working with their membership, we never actually sat at the same table with any of their members. We weren't within the same realm as the initial offer put on the table by the NEA rep. Eventually, over time and discussion, their members agreed to this, but it was under the terms of a one-year deal and no changes to benefits.
And have they already moved to the yellow 2.0 plan?
Yes.
Okay. And are they on orange?
They have the option of orange as
Okay.
well.
So they've
Yes.
already made the moves on health insurance.
Correct.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. CEA contracts, which is the teachers.
Okay, this is a 3-year contract, would be for, through 2029. There are changes in the wages, would be a 1.5 for year 1 and 2.75 for each of year 2 and 3. They are moving to the yellow 2.0, and they will be adding the orange 2.0 in year 2. And there is some language changes and different things that are listed on. Do you want me to go through each one?
I don't think so, unless people have questions. Ms.
I just had a
Sadowski?
clarifying question, please. They have
Sure.
the option to move to orange, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. Just
Yes.
thank you.
It's the
And
op-
just a clarification on that, not in year 1.
Right. Yeah, year 2,
yep.
year 3.
There's we feel, and I think they agreed with us, you have to do a level of education for your members to understand how an HSA works. And because we were so far along in the process, it was not beneficial to have that option year 1.
And I have a clarifying question
Yes.
too. What was the parent-teacher conference study committee?
They were,
Go ahead.
they were looking at different options as far as, because it's on the same night and that the elementary and middle school and high school parents that have, so we're looking at different options on how to do
When to
parent.
host it.
Correct.
Ms. Manow?
Would that committee also look at the timing of report cards and meetings? Because I know I've had meetings with teachers and they say, this sure would be helpful to have a year from now when I have a report card to show you. So I know that's a frustration for some teachers about the timing of reports and meetings.
And the committee's going to be made up of CEA leadership, some teacher reps from the various levels, as well as myself and other administrators to discuss this. So I do believe those perspectives is really what's leading to us having this dialogue and saying we have to dig into it and make sure we're meeting the needs of all participants at each level.
Ms. Meeker?
I did. I just want to confirm, this has already been voted on by the membership
Correct.
Yes, it was ratified last Tuesday.
last Tuesday. Do we know, is there a vote count or is it just a up or down?
We did not receive a vote count, just an affirmative.
Okay.
Would someone like to move the CEA contract?
Oh, right, we haven't moved it yet. So moved.
Moved by Ms. Meeker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Manow. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, Pittsfield's contract for SAU services. Is this the superintendent going to discuss?
So, and I'll have Jack, and Jack has been my partner in crime on doing this and having these discussions back and forth with Pittsfield. So just a brief synopsis of the contract. We have shared this document out with the board already. So, key understandings is this is not like a business merger or us taking over all operations for Pittsfield. This is purely, it's the SAU leadership. There is on-site representatives of the Deerfield current administrative body that will
Pittsfield.
Pittsfield, I'm sorry. Sorry. No, not Deerfield. I'm sorry. Another district on my mind right now. But there will be on-site administrative leadership of the current Pittsfield administrative bodies, that will be doing day-to-day things such as facilities, gathering the information for budget, managing on-site expectations. As far as my role, I am making big financial decisions in conversations with their board, in conversation with their district leadership, and I don't have sole authority to make those decisions. It ultimately gets kicked back to their board to make those decisions. But I'm guiding that process, facilitating that process. We will be on the hook for business management services, Jack's department, our senior accounting, our payroll. We will feel some pressure there, though there will be some onboarding. We had some conversations about this over the last couple of weeks. I've met with the payroll manager, and again, who assured me she's gone through at least 12 different programs in her lifetime, and it'll be another program to learn. There's nuances to each individual contract, so there will be some learning there. But at the same time, we've begun discussions with their members there. We are planning future meetings, so we begin this onboarding and understanding of what they have in place, what we have in place, and how we can make this work and try and mitigate some of those pressure points. HR, Mrs. Guerin's world, will also be a pressure point. Onboarding of a different district's personnel, teachers, the different benefits that they have, different CBA that they have, all of that, understanding those different tracks will be something also that will be a learning curve for our HR department. Again, it's one of those things where we realize the pressure points, we realize what we are going to need to do to support our staff here and not have this impact our ability to serve the Concord School District as well. But ultimately, this provides a couple things for both districts. As we call it, a partnership, an agreement, working together, it does begin generating revenue for the Concord School District, and over time has a potential to mitigate some of the volatility in our revenue flows. Pittsfield School District, who's struggling to maintain quality education, educators for their students, as well as having a consistent leadership over a long period of time to see through strategic plans that are set for the district, is something that they have not been able to maintain, and with this sort of an agreement would be able to have something that they have not had for a while. So there is some benefits to both districts with this partnership. Anything you would add to that before?
Nope.
Just getting a little bit deeper into the collaborative model. This partnership, again, what our responsibility is, ultimately we're providing the senior leadership of an SAU. That does come with, under Michelle, her services through her benefits specialist, services through her contract person who pumps out the contracts and individuals, make sure she does the right, she does the right CBAs, understanding the different retirement benefits of both districts. All that stuff is stuff that will be held through Michelle. And essentially, we'll provide those sort of leadership models. It does not require us to be on site in Pittsfield. In fact, they don't have an SAU office. They had a room, which they won't even, and after this year, will not even possess that room. Will become part of their early or first start preschool, is it? A preschool program that currently occupies that building, Jack?
I think you're right, yeah.
So it might be a Head Start preschool that will actually take over that. So there is no physical space that will be occupying. These will be a hybrid model where there will be times where we'll go for on-site meetings, but a bulk of our operations will actually occur here in Concord. So it's not like I'm expected to be on site multiple days a week in Pittsfield, or Jack is expected, or Michelle. We are continuing to work with them and having discussions. There are flows, communication, workflows, and things that we still have to iron out, and we'll be doing those over the next few weeks. But what we do feel confident is, between us and the Pittsfield board, that we have defined roles and expectations for the SAU in Concord, and we have defined roles and expectation for what their personnel is expected to do on the ground in Pittsfield. And both parties believe that it will not impact either party's ability to do our job. One thing that's been clear from the start with the Pittsfield School Board is this is not a merger. They're not looking for Concord to take over governance responsibilities. They're not looking for Concord to make drastic changes. They're looking for us to assist them in providing consistent leadership at the top, which they haven't had for a while, and come up with creative solutions for the fact that they're struggling to maintain staffing and quality programming for their students. Anything else you would add
No,
to that?
I think you're right on.
Go ahead. Question?
Well, I can wait till the very end if you're
Oh.
sort of in the middle of it all.
I'll go, just summary. This is just a summary. This is what it's about.
And dollars and cents?
And dollars and cents, so the dollars and cents are in the contract right now. And it comes out to about $263,000 for year one of this contract for SAU services, and I believe it increases by 3% each year.
Yeah, there's a CPI adjuster in there, plus there's also a base phase. I think it's 260, 263, and I think next year goes to 270 or 275, and then year three is high again, and then that's at a point where do you continue doing that? There's also certain notification pieces in there. There is also a transition plan that's being developed. There'll be a draft one by this time in June, and then finalized by August on how we plan on transitioning them to be able to help make all this happen.
Ms. Higgins, you had a question?
Yeah, mine's more a boots on the ground kind of question. So I'm the HR director, or I'm your executive assistant, or I'm you or your assistant, I'm pointing to you, Jack. So we're getting a big chunk of work that's going to make our jobs busier, learning all sorts of new things. So am I getting a pay raise? Am I getting a paid assistant from Pittsfield? Are Concord taxpayers paying a lot of money to give raises to people who are now doing way more work than they were? Like, what's
No,
the,
so-
I like the big number and all.
So the $263,000
How is she gonna,
will be utilized to ensure
I'm worried about you.
to ensure things like our payroll staffing. We'll bring on part-time payroll for a transitional period to ensure we're familiar with their systems, we understand their pay periods, any nuances that come with it. So we'll have that additional help. But currently it's done by one person in Pittsfield. We have two here. They're confident they can do it, but they need transition time. So we will support them in that. We're hearing what they're saying they need. One of our senior accountants will be taking on the bulk of some of this business piece under Jack's supervision, but it's going to be a significant amount of work. So we've already sat down and talked with them, what responsibilities go into that, found comparative positions, using funds generated through this contract would compensate them fairly as compared to other positions similar to it, like a for lack of better terms, like an assistant BA, because they will be Jack be technically the BA of record, but this person will be doing a lot of the finances under his supervision. So there's things like that, and we will be looking at, do we need an HR specialist in order to support Michelle? She's been part of these conversations. And again, there are some workflow things, and there are going to be more responsibilities on myself. I know that means whenever Tim's impacted by it, Bridget's impacted by it. So I tell her frequently we are a dual, and she reminds me of that too when I do things on the fly. But she and I, yeah, we're going to receive more calls. We're going to have to talk to more people, and I'm sure, like I speak to the principals here in Concord on a regular basis, I'm going to have to speak to my designee in Pittsfield as challenges come up, and we navigate them. So at the end of the day, some of this money is going to be used to be put in the general fund to reimburse the Concord School District for my time that will be used to service Pittsfield, Jack to service Pittsfield, Michelle to service Pittsfield. The stuff we have it broken down in another workflow, and we'll see how it works, and we may need to adjust things as things go on. But then on the flip side of that, the people who are going to be taking on a significant amount of work, we are using some of these funds to compensate them appropriately, or to a position that we may already have that we're not sure if we need to hire exactly for that. We're considering, do we change it up a little bit in order to support this sort of a transaction and use some of those funds to do it instead of hiring back what we had before.
My motherly response is we have a superintendent who's not quite a year into his first of many, hopefully many, that didn't know he was going to be a superintendent until he was one. We have 2 new assistant superintendents coming. We have several new principals and a huge reduction in some of our administrative staff. I would implore you not to bite off more than you can chew, and that as this goes forward, we all be mindful that we have a whole brand-new operating system of administrators and all these responsibilities. So I'm a little cautious about it.
There's 2 things I would say to that. One is I'm more familiar with Pittsfield's operations than I was with Concord as a superintendent, because when you go to schooling for superintendency, you learn about town meetings, you learn about SB2, you don't learn about board autonomy, because guess what? There's one board that has it that I'm aware of, and it's here. So I'm more familiar with the responsibilities of a smaller district like that in New Hampshire, and Jenny probably would agree with me. That is the predominant model that my colleagues work with day in and day out. And I'm very lucky, and I think this transition that, to Barb's point, I did not think I'd be sitting here today. If you'd asked me this last year, I would not have thought that would be the case. I think Brenda may have asked me if I was considering it something like this last year, and I say, give me a few more years. But I've been fortunate to have a seasoned team of Michelle, Jack, Bridget, Matt, and our other leadership here. It's not just the superintendent. They're seasoned, and they've gone through. When I sit down and talk with Michelle, she's telling me what she's experienced in Hudson, which you've also experienced. It was Hudson and so although Jack's predominantly been Concord, he's very savvy with the finances and revenues coming in, so we know that, but Michelle's experience in other towns is very helpful. Matt's diverse experience is very helpful. However, he's not going to be utilized by them because they have an on-site facilities guy. But so I just say that's one thing. And the impact to the new administration in the district, I will be coming to you very shortly to talk about mentorship and what I feel that we need to support our administrators in the district, and I've spoken with them too. So that's something that will be down the line.
Thank you. Did you have your hand up, Ms. Campbell?
This question is for Jack, really. Thinking about our responsibility to Concord taxpayers and to the board today and the board the future boards, whoever they may be. How will you be keeping track in a very clear and transparent way of our expenses, any hires we have to make for this, time spent and income, so we can show that to our communities and have a strong understanding of that?
Monthly report.
Okay, so yeah, we are going to be treating them completely separate equipment, separate provided by them. We are going to create a designated office here. So when we're in Pittsfield, that's where we work from. We felt that it was important to distinguish between when Concord's work's being done and Pittsfield's work's being done. And we plan on tracking those hours because we also want to benchmark them against the proposal that we put together to make sure that it's aligning to the fee that we created versus what are the actual amounts of time being done. We also do not have control over their IT, so that's another reason why we want to keep them separate. They contract that out. So I hope that answers your question.
It's more in lines of the finances. So I heard earlier mention like something going in general funds. Like, will we have a separate section for those with different line items? Kind of like, what would it look like on our finances?
They're a whole separate bank. Accounts, separate systems. You won't see them.
I think
she means the 260 that comes in.
And
are we going to track exactly
the revenue.
where it goes, and then like what portion of that is used?
Yes,
to...
we can do a monthly report out based on how we're utilizing that and whatnot. So and it probably is not going to change after the first month or so, and what's remaining will go to the general fund to reimburse the time of others being used if we don't use it to compensate people or adjust a position. But we can report out. Or I would assume sometime around August we'll have a better idea of what our needs and what's in place as we've actually start moving forward with some of this, and we'll be able to share out monthly like, hey, this is just we can put a Pittsfield report and this is how we're doing it.
That would be great. I don't anticipate it changing a lot, but just we to our taxpayers, someone says,
I
hey,
think,
is our money going towards Pittsfield? It'd be nice to be like, no, this is what's coming in. This is exactly what's being spent. So
number one question is, why are you doing this in Pittsfield? I need my superintendent in Concord. And to be able to justify, we're making sure the time spent, if we're compensated, and you're reimbursed as a Concord taxpayer for that.
Thank you.
Ms. Hastings?
My question, I think, tags along to that. So we track this, and we find out in February or March that $263,000 is expended for the year. We still have to provide the services for the contract. Are we able to bill them at that point then for more?
So the contract has provisions of certain things that are billable. So you may have heard that they voted to close their high school. That is just, I think, a recognition from the community that they are okay with going down that path. That doesn't mean what they voted for means it's going to be closed. If that were to be put on our plate that they need assistance, that's going to be something separate outside the scope of this.
So-
That also does trigger an adjustment to this contract to potentially open it up.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure people
Big
understood,
things
that
could trigger it.
that while we have this contract,
Yep.
we also have the ability to adjust it as needed if it requires more than we expected.
I did see in the contract that, you know, they'll be reimbursed for mileage. We're not going to pay them to drive over there for meetings, right? They're going to be reimbursed for mileage for that, and any specific supplies that are purchased to satisfy the requirements of this contract can be billed in addition.
It would be helpful once you get a little bit in the systems, and I understand you haven't been yet, but to get to us a budget of, salary increases, additional personnel. I'm confident that you will stay well within the amount of this contract. But, I think to have that as exactly what it is would be helpful too.
Yep.
Anything else? And I say that with the belief that we should use some of the money from this contract to make sure that we are not, that we're bringing in additional help for the people who are going to be taking on the work where needed.
Just this last slide is just emphasizing that we are not taking all sole responsibility of finances and decision making, all things encompassing of the Pittsfield School District. We are providing that senior leadership. We are providing that financial oversight and the HR oversight. And so there are elements of our SAU team that will not be really impacted by this agreement. So,
Okay. Would someone like to move acceptance of this contract?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Campbell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Meeker. Further discussion. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Superintendent?
no, I just to highlight, it's a partnership. I do believe, in light of as we continue to struggle with the revenues coming in for our state, that partnerships like this is going to be a more and more common thing across the state of New Hampshire. We've had others inquire. This was what we felt like an easier partnership. More their senior leadership, their board was speaking the same language as us as we discussed what we thought we could manage. It fell in line with their needs, and it made sense. So there was a lot of thought put into this. This was not the only district that approached us about would we ever consider, but this was a district that seemed to be on the same page with us, and a partnership made sense. So as we go forward, we do have an opportunity. It's a 3-year agreement. After 3 years, we have an opportunity to restate what our concerns are or what we feel we need to continue this partnership and negotiate that with them. As at the same time, they may have a different need and be vocalizing that to us. So this is something that will be an ongoing refinement, and we're one of maybe 2 in the state in New Hampshire that do this.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of interest around the state on how this goes, because people see this as becoming potentially the new norm of SAU services across our state.
Anybody else? Ms. Campbell?
I just want to say thank you for being proactive, right? This could have been something that 3 years from now that we have to do and be very active to. The fact that we are being proactive and trying it out in bite-sized pieces like this, thank you so much. You're truly preparing the district for the future.
Team effort.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Finally, in March, during the budget process, this board voted to put on the ballot questions about selling this building and the broken ground property. We need to set a public hearing under our charter for things that are going to go on the ballot. I am proposing 6 p.m. on July 13th. So I will make a motion that we set the public hearings for ballot resolutions on selling broken ground and selling this building for July 13th. Second by Ms. Higgins. Discussion?
So that date is that for us to vote on putting it on the ballot?
So we are required to hold a public hearing on things that go on the ballot, whether we put them on the ballot or whether we get petitioned to put them on the ballot. People can come and comment, and then, yes, we will make a vote on putting them.
The vote will happen at the hearing.
Vote will, actually, I think we have to, I think there has to be a waiting period. So it'll happen at our August meeting.
Thank you.
So this is I took number 20, which is in your charter now, that talks about anything bigger than 1 acre shall be sold, gifted, or exchanged by the district without an affirmative simple majority vote of the Concord School District voters. So these are the two ballot initiatives that I worked with legal counsel to bring to you. So this is introducing those that will be available for public comment. The first one is authorizing the selling of this building, and the second one is the selling of the 59.08 acres at 11 Curtisville Road on the other side of the river.
Ms. Meeker?
I believe in our discussions, we talked about saying in ballot initiative to sell up to 59.08 acres.
Can you do that?
We
I
wanted-
agree, or any
We wanted to
portion.
have, any portion greater than an acre and up to 59 because we want to convey to the voters that we just are looking for permission to sell some portion, if not all.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's logical.
Okay.
Ms. Sadowski?
I will say, I mean, as an abutter, I will recuse myself from voting on the Curtisville property. I would say that given that community trust has been such a reoccurring issue with matters with the school board, I would highly advise the board to not vote on an issue like this during the summer vacation season.
The problem we have
Is that we won't make the ballot.
we won't make the ballot.
But we also won't get an accurate read, I think, when people are tuned out for the school year.
I think Sarah Sadowski and Mrs. Sadowski makes a great point, and I think the way we communicate with the public should be brought to city and community so that they can think of strategies of how better to communicate this or other things, because I see that as a role of the city and community.
I certainly hear you about the summer. We talked about doing it the week of the 6th, and I wanted to push it out a little bit from the 4th of July week. We do have the problem with ballot, but, this is, ultimately the people are going to get to vote up or down on it.
And perhaps in the case of the Dewey School where there is a carrying cost associated, but I don't think, and especially given the animosity that was incurred with the conversation about the relocation of the middle school, I'm highly sensitive to the needs of this neighborhood, and I've already had a couple of communications with folks today. And again, I would just say voting during the summer on this doesn't feel good to me.
Ms. Manow, Ms. Meeker, Ms. Higgins.
I do want to clarify that the public hearing is not the only opportunity people have to have their voice heard, right? They can absolutely, I would weigh just as much someone sending me an email anytime between now and the public and the vote on the issue. And I mean, yes, we really appreciate it when people take the time to come to a public hearing, but not everybody can make it at a certain time on a certain date. So there's other ways to communicate with board members and have their voice be heard.
Ms. Meeker and Ms. Higgins.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, this public hearing is, a required formality in the process, but it is a discussion that we've been having ongoing for some time, whether we should or should not. Once we take a vote to put it on the ballot, then we have months to educate, to let people know what's happening, to answer questions, and then even after, if it gets on the ballot and it's an affirmative vote, it's not an immediate sale. It just initiates a new process by which we begin the discussion, knowing that we can sell, So for me, this is a very long and studious process.
Ms. Higgins?
Is it costing us anything to have that property? I mean, it costs us, we have to maintain this. I get it, we're not getting money, we're not getting tax dollars. or anything on
I
it.
will defer to the things, I mean, we carry
Liability
liability for the
insurance?
property, you know, that a lot of people use, and
My big issue was in trying to support a very
Yeah.
logical thing here. We could push the Dewey and focus on that. We have Eastman on the thing as well. And maybe take time to gather more information around that piece of property, and that is next year on the ballot. I mean, that's just my thought process. I know that we're battling two things. Let's increase revenue and decrease expense and all of this, but I think, I hear it.
Yeah, Carrie, your point about process is well taken. I would argue we're dealing with exactly the public perception that hearings are somehow a formality. And so I would not want to reinforce that optic by having something that will be extremely contentious in our neighborhoods be a summer hearing.
I'm going to withdraw my motion if Ms. Higgins, so that we can vote on the two separately,
That would be great.
if you agree.
I agree.
So I move that we set a public hearing for ballot initiative 1, selling the Dewey School land as outlined there, for Monday, July 13th. Second by Ms. Higgins. Further discussion? Do we need a roll call or any?
Can I ask, a clarifying question?
Yep.
So, my understanding is that the people of Concord voted that they want this board to ask the people of Concord if we want to sell land ever. And that's what we're proposing to do, is ask them what they want us to. We're not saying we are dead set on selling this land. In my mind, the process that we've initiated is people of Concord, we're going to put this on the ballot so you can tell us whether or not you want us to sell this land. The answer could be no. It might be no. But it might not. I don't know what 45,000 people think.
Rebuttal?
Well, response.
It is. We definitely, your point is well taken. And I would argue that we have a process, and the process entails a public hearing. And holding a public hearing for a potentially contentious sale of a piece of property without giving the public an opportunity to make their voices heard, like right after the 4th of July. I love that you didn't do the week after the 4th of July. That would have been, I think that would have been really difficult. But that being said, folks are still on, summer mode. And to Liz's point earlier, I think it was a very good one. How much homework are we expecting the average citizen to do around board business? And I think in July, I don't think folks are going to be adequately tuned in. And we do have a public hearing process. So I suggest we work the process, have an authentic public hearing during the fall to say, next year we're putting this on the ballot. That I could wholly support.
I'm not sure that timing works, but that's a question for another day.
Yeah. But I do appreciate the move to separate them.
And to the point, we're talking about Dewey School at the moment, right?
I think your question, though, still
Yes.
stands. I mean, whether it's Dewey or whether it's this.
Right, in my mind, what the process is that we're discussing is not, we are selling these properties, right? Is we would like to ask the people of Concord what they think about the board potentially selling these properties. And I hear a lot of backlash about our autonomy. And this is a process where, but now I'm hearing backlash on us asking people what they think. In my mind, what we voted on in March and the process that we are talking about undertaking is asking the people of Concord what they think, genuinely. Anyone who will show up to the polls in November.
Well, it is not, voter turnout is going to be lower in November. So it arguably becomes an issue of who mobilizes better.
Sorry, she had her hand up.
Ms. Higgins?
No, I didn't have my hand up.
Okay, Ms. Meeker?
Ms. Boucher.
I was just going to agree with Madeline on this, but I would agree with Sarah, Ms. Sadowski, if this didn't have to go to the ballot. Then I would agree we need to make this very open in all possible ways. But because now we're required to take this to the ballot, I would agree with Ms. Minot that we're giving the opportunity of what they had asked for to do. They want to be able to represent themselves at the ballot.
I don't think that that precludes wanting a voice at a public hearing either.
I would also point out that turnout is going to be a lot higher this year than next year in off year in a purely municipal election versus a state election. So if you're concerned about the number of
Turnout,
people,
representation.
It's going to be a lot lower in 27 based on
And
history
still
than
lower
26.
than in a presidential period.
Ms. Meeker.
And I really just feel like at some point, we have to engage in the process that we are required to engage in per the charter. So in terms of whether it's good timing for the summer or good timing because it's Christmas or Hanukkah or good time, like at some point we have to engage in the process. We made the motion, we passed the motion in March. People heard about it, they continue to hear about it. You know, tonight is setting a public hearing per the process. And, you know, to Madeline's point, you know, we are just trying to get this in front of the voters because that is what the charter amendment dictates. And we are talking about budgetary issues 5 years out. Delaying discussion on this, I think, is unwise. I think we need to be proactive, as Ms. Campbell said, on any matter in which we could potentially collect revenue.
I would, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I would just point to our agenda for this evening and the fact that this was an amendment to the proposed public agenda to say, we need time. Look at all these big issues that we're working on. You know, folks.
So that was an administrative error that the.
But it still was public facing.
We discussed it last week, and I get that, but like, I do think you need to be consistent in your position. Either we hold a public hearing on, it's okay, not okay in your neighborhood, but it's okay in mine, you know.
I think we need to be consistent with thoughtful public hearings and really making an effort to show people that when they come out, their time matters. And I don't think anyone's arguing against that. I think we all share that value.
Yeah.
So can we vote
Yeah,
on
let's
Dewey?
take a vote.
Yes, let's vote on the Dewey piece. All those in favor, Mr. Dunn, are there any requirements for roll call or anything
I
on
would
this?
do a roll call.
Okay.
Please
Ms.
do.
Boucher, will you call the roll, please?
Okay, so it's to put the ballot initiative,
To set the public hearing.
set the public hearing specifically for ballot initiative number 1.
Yep.
Okay, Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Dubois.
Yes.
Ms. Hastings.
Yes.
Ms. Higgins.
Yes.
Ms. Meeker.
Yes.
Ms. Minot.
Yes.
Ms. Sadowski.
Yes.
Ms. Walls.
Yes.
And I am a yes.
Would someone like to move ballot initiative 2?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Meeker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Boucher. Discussion.
Can I just ask, we said the timing is because we wouldn't make the November ballot. What is the timeline require? How much before
I think it's mid-September.
September do we have to have a hearing so that
What's the
we
latest we
could?
could have?
That's what I'm asking.
I think before it was mid-September, in order for the clerk to have.
The day the filing ends for candidates, is it the same day this needs to be submitted?
So essentially the first week of school. Right, or the week after Labor Day, generally.
So that's when it starts.
there isn't
It's
a good
usually about
time.
mid-September.
Mid-September. So,
This doesn't help us at all, but if I've learned anything in 15 years on the board, is that sometimes decisions like this by a board to take into consideration a chunk of people's feelings in the area they live goes a long way in support on other things. And I think we've just had a couple of really rough years. And I don't know, financially speaking, that it would be a big detriment to put this off a year. I know that the 2027 election and all of that, there's always a million reasons why things might not be good, but I do feel if you have your finger on the pulse of your neighborhood, and this is gonna seem like one more thing the school board does just because they can, we have to find ways in our overseeing of the running of the district and the things that we decide to let the public know that we do in fact give a hoot, and that sometimes it's not a bad thing.
Ms. Hastings, Ms. Boucher.
As someone who lives in this neighborhood too, I guess I see the benefit in having the initiative number 2 go on the ballot in November is that we will know what the public thinks. You know, we can't control who votes and who doesn't, and when they vote and when they don't. But we need to have this information to help guide us to make these very important decisions. And I think putting it off a year isn't giving us a whole lot more. So I think I'll support ballot initiative number 2.
So I'm going to be contradictory. Ms. Higgins might have a stroke.
I don't know which way this is going.
I know. And now I need to know what she's thinking. I want to get rid of this building. I think it's an albatross. I've said multiple times, I think that the fact that we have a building that is not accessible to all of our students and staff is atrocious. And also, I just think we don't need the cost. I have worried for a while that the second initiative might kill the first. I've also been getting emails that say, well, we should make it conservation land. The school district is not in the business of running conservation land. It's not what we do. It's not our skill set. But I'd be willing to take a year to let the city decide if they want to make this conservation land. This is not in the master plan. This is not conservation land. It's actually land for a school in the city's master plan. But I would be willing to delay to 27, to give the city a chance to decide if this is what they want it to be. For me, that timeline, going into it would probably make sense. We'll know either way. And also, I really worry that 2 will kill 1, and that's where I come in it.
A question, are they mutually exclusive?
Yes, they're totally not related, but I can see one taking down the other.
But if we have the public hearing on number 2.
Well, we have to have the public hearing on both. If we pass this tonight, then the public hearing is on both.
Okay. But if we had a public hearing,
you could still reject it. Yeah.
And either way, could we still give the city an opportunity to look at whether they want to put it into conservation?
We could vote to put it on the ballot, and the city can still look at it. We could vote to not put it on the ballot, and the city could still look at it.
So us voting one way or the other isn't going to cause the city to not be able to do something?
No.
Okay.
But to Pam's point, us pissing off the public, so to speak, could get them to vote no on both. Like, forget it, we vote no. You can't, and not understanding what they're voting no on, thinking they're doing the right thing. Like I see that aspect of Pam's piece of it. We're agreeing. I'm kind of freaking out here.
Yeah. And
me too.
I mean, and I think what we're doing is we're getting into a question of process and we're also leaning into a political discussion. We're leaning into how do we maneuver these questions so as to get the outcome we desire, which I also don't love. What I do know is that in March, this board voted to put both 1 and 2 on the ballot. When I say formality, I mean setting the date for the public hearing is a formality that is related to the decision we have already made. So if we are deciding that that decision is not, in fact, what we want, whether it be for political reasons, procedural reasons, communication reasons, I'm open to that discussion. I think I'm just very surprised that this is the time where this discussion is coming up. Because for me, this was just a simple motion to set a date to have a conversation.
Just worried that everyone's at the conversation.
And I think that and if you're worried that there aren't going to be enough people, this gets to the larger topic that I think you guys have touched on tonight is, as board members, what do we owe the community? Other than posting meetings, other than, setting dates, what do we owe them? And I think this is a question we're grappling with as a board right now. How many responses does someone deserve? How many invitations do they need? How many marketing flyers? This is a way bigger conversation that I think is kind of like working its way into an otherwise what I would see as a logistical matter. But if that's the conversation we need to have tonight, so be it. I think we maybe can sit with it and prepare for that conversation at the public hearing itself. And maybe that would be helpful.
I would just like to circle back on the discussion is supposed to be about ballot initiative number 2.
Yeah.
Right? That's what's on the table.
Yes.
Would you like to call the vote? Is that what you're asking?
I would like to call the vote.
Anything?
I just want to say, I'm having a little bit of a hard time because I was absolutely not expecting this level of discussion on what was portrayed as a formality of scheduling a hearing.
Because I prepped the wrong agenda.
And it's being portrayed that scheduling a public hearing in July means we don't care about the public's input, when I thought that putting a question on the ballot is literally caring about the public's input. But we can't get to the putting the question on the ballot without having the hearing, which we are constrained because of the date of the election and the filing period as to when that can possibly be. It can only be between now and September, which is the summer.
And there has to be 15
And there has to be some
days
time in
between the
between
public hearing and when we vote.
the hearing and the vote, exactly. So it's either in the summer or it's not happening. Yeah, so I feel like now we're in between a rock and a hard place. We're either portrayed that we don't care what the public thinks if we have a public hearing, but we also don't care, like we're stuck either way.
Welcome to the school board.
We're not stuck either way. We could just do Dewey, and then we could just come at it next year for the Curtisville property.
And so we're just assuming the public does not
The
want
fact
us
of the
to sell
matter
land.
is I serve on this board, and I circulated the agenda for tonight to several of my constituents, and it did not have this conversation on it. And I know it's administrative, it's procedural, but I do think process matters. And so I think the optics of setting a summer meeting for something so important have repercussions.
But we got an email from a constituent today who clearly was aware of it.
Emails-
And I respond to that constituent because their concern is conservation. And I do think that if the community of Concord's goal is to conserve that land, the school district is not the best owner to achieve that goal, right? A land trust, a conservation organization, or the city's conservation commission would be a better steward of that land if the community's goal is to put it in conservation. We can't do that if we continue to own it.
Okay, Ms. Sadowski, I think.
I wholly agree with
This
you.
conversation to.
I don't think the plan is to indefinitely hold the piece of property. I think that it's about process and communication. And to be sure, we just heard from a group of people who feel like their voices weren't heard. We have public hearings so that folks have a bunch of mechanisms through which they can make their voice heard. Some people prefer to come out to a public hearing. I personally find public testimony much more impactful than an email, but that's not the case for everyone. I know that some people prefer written communication.
Right.
So we have to offer an authentic array of communication options.
Ms. Boucher, will you call the roll?
Ms. Campbell,
No.
Mr. Dubois.
So the vote.
Yes,
To
it is
set
to set the date.
To set the public hearing date for July 13th for the ballot initiative number 2. Just the public hearing, the same as we did before.
Yes.
Ms. Hastings.
Yes.
Ms. Higgins.
No.
Ms. Meeker.
Yes.
Ms. Minot.
Yes.
Ms. Sadowski.
No.
Ms. Walsh.
No.
And I'm a yes.
Okay.
5, motion carries.
That is the end of the public agenda. We have a 5-minute non-public
Can I make,
to discuss legal counsel
I'm
advice.
going to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we bring the topic of how best to communicate with the public to the city and community.
Seconded.
Committee, so that
Yeah.
they can figure out a plan. We're referring this to the city.
We will refer it to the city and community. I move that we go into non-public to discuss advice from legal counsel. Is there a second?
Second.
We all second.
Second by Ms. Hastings. It's a roll call vote.
It's okay. Take your time.
Take your time, Ms. Boucher.
We know the order, we can just say yes or no.
We'll go off
Oh, man.
Oh, by the way, the last motion passed. Yes.
We counted. But we can still decide to not put it on
Yes,
this
we still-
November's
oh, yeah,
ballot
yes, right.
after we have the public
okay,
hearing.
Who was the motion? Who was the motion to
I
refer the
moved-
plan to? Who was the second?
Me, Brenda.
No, on the motion to go into non-public.
Oh,
No, the motion for referral. I don't think that requires a motion.
Motion, I
She could just
referred
refer
it.
Oh, you just referred it. Thank you.
I'm so confused.
Okay, Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Dubois.
Yes.
Ms. Hastings.
Are you okay?
Ms.
Yes.
Hastings.
No,
Ms.
public.
Higgins.
Yes, okay.
Ms. Meeker.
Yep.
Ms. Minot.
Yes.
Ms. Sadowski.
Yes.
Ms. Walsh.
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Right. We will not be coming back into public session tonight except to adjourn. So we're going to let Concord TV go home.